Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to MUFC versus everybody. I am your host, Sean, and I appreciate you stopping by this morning, wherever you are, whether you're on your way to work, whether you're just getting up with your first cup of coffee like me, or if you happen to be over in the UK or anything and it's, lunchtime. Thank you for making me a part of your lunchtime break. I appreciate that. I would really appreciate it too if everybody would drop a like on the video. Everybody would subscribe to the channel if you are new, of course, and then go check me out on Twitter. I'm UFC versus everybody. Don't forget to leave a comment. We are live every day with the news roundup for Manchester United. The live chat's always open. I respond to comments. I will respond to live chats. So feel free to share your thoughts. Keep them respectful. Like I said, I am sensitive. It does hurt my feelings when people are mean. So let's try to keep it respectful. And excuse me for a scratchy voice today. The allergies are really bad. And I am representing Livonia City FC today. They do kick off their season this weekend against Michigan Stars. I want to say it is an away match, but they do kick off their season in the Midwest Premier League in the Great Lakes Division. So I hope that they will kick off the season to a good result and get the win and start the season strong. And when they get their first home match in a few weeks, I will be there to cheer them on. Let me just adjust my screen there. There we go. So let's kick off with a bit of United news today. So a couple things to touch on. Potential sporting director news regarding Newcastle United. And then obviously, if you guys have been following along, Erik Ten Hag just sat down with Gary Neville for Sky Sports interview. It was about a half hour. A lot of little clips and pieces and quotes from that are kind of making the rounds on social media. I actually sat down and watched the whole thing, took a lot of notes. So I'm going to dive deep into that towards the end of today's update, just so you guys can get the gist and obviously get a little bit of context, because it's easy to take a single line from an interview and say, see, I told you, or look, he's at, like, I want to go through the whole thing, watching the body language, watching the context, what questions were asked and things. I know, like, for instance, a lot of people were like, see, you wanted Harry Kane. I don't know if that's exactly what Ten Hag said, but we will dive right in. So let's get stuck in. We're going to start with some sporting director news. So this is coming from Ben Jacobs, obviously a well-respected journalist. So apparently, according to Ben Jacobs, Newcastle United are expected to decide on their new sporting director in the coming days and weeks. So as we head into the closing end of the season, sounds like Newcastle are trying to get their man in place here. So once that happens, Dan Ashworth to Manchester United is very likely to accelerate. Obviously, it's like you sell a house after, after you've already purchased a new house, you don't want to pay two mortgages. So Newcastle aren't going to want to pay Ashworth while they're paying a new person. So once that happens, Dan Ashworth is coming in. Obviously, we spoke yesterday that in a meeting with Sir Jim and Manchester United staff and INEOS staff, he basically said, Dan Ashworth is coming soon. He'll be here soon. So I think it's going to ramp up. And it can't come any sooner. We need to start this window strong. We need to get recruitment right. We need to get a lot of these players out. We need to hopefully get some good deals for them, because we do need help financially. But that's, like I've said many times, I think Dan Ashworth is, along with Omar Barada and company and Wilcox, are going to be probably the most important appointments we can make this summer, because they're going to set us up for a long term. They'll probably save us a lot of money. They'll be able to identify some really good players, hopefully. And it'll be nice to have an actual recruitment staff in place that's not just, Ed Woodward, Richard Arnold, and John Murtaugh. So this is some good news. Obviously, Ten Hag did a presser the other day. We do have some injury news as we head into our match against Crystal Palace on Monday. I will be doing a preview of that this weekend, so don't forget to stop by for that. So Bruno is a doubt, according to Ten Hag, due to injury. So we know that he's been playing with a broken hand. You've seen it casted up. But apparently he's also been carrying an ankle issue, but he's been kind of playing through the pain barrier. And so obviously we know Bruno is going to run through brick walls. The guy barely misses a minute if possible. And he is always ready, always available, always puts in 110%. But it might be just one little injury too many for him. Ten Hag also said in the presser that McTominay hasn't trained this week, but he is expected to train this weekend. Obviously, McTominay went off against Burnley after coming on, and then he did release a statement saying, it wasn't as bad as we thought. I just kind of hyperextended it. Be back soon. So thank F for that, because we cannot afford any more injuries, no matter the player. Johnny Evans is back in training, but maybe too soon still for him, according to Ten Hag. And Anthony Martial is back in training. So, like I said yesterday, we're going to win the league. So there's a bit of injury news. Let's go on to some transfer news. So James Ollie with ESPN has shared that there are reports coming out that United are currently the front runners for Michael Olise, who obviously plays for Crystal Palace, young French winger. He represents a homegrown talent because he's been here several years, and he obviously is a very creative winger. Got a really sharp left foot on a really good shot. Obviously, he did damage with that against us, which it takes this thing out a little bit, but he's a good winger. Again, I don't know if it would be my priority. Again, I think Frimpong could be converted to a winger because he already is very attacking. He has a lot of assists. He gets involved a lot in the attack, and he plays higher up as a wingback for Leverkusen. Obviously, it's going to be difficult to get Frimpong out of Leverkusen on the player end, but he does have that really cheap release clause that's like half of what it's going to take to get Olise. So I do think in terms of wingers, if both players are interested in joining United, I think it's a no-brainer for me. But, Olise does have a price tag around that 60, 65 million pound mark. So it is a bit pricey when we have a lot of other priorities, in my opinion, because we do have a lot of wingers. Obviously, I think a few people would like to see a couple of them sold. I think one or two might be out the door anyway, regarding like Sancho or Palestri. So we'll see what happens there. But apparently we are ahead of the queue when it comes to Michael Olise. Sticking with wingers, so Neil Custis with The Sun is reporting that Marcus Rashford is set to sit down with Sir Dave Brailsford and INEOS for talks. Honestly, I forgot that Dave Brailsford was a Sir. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Sir Dave. We were like, it's like Knights of the Round Table at United these days. I don't really know what that means, sit down for talks, whatever kind of talks that is, about his future, about his performances, about maybe hopefully even about like just what's going on for him mentally and emotionally this season, if there's anything else going on that the club can kind of help with, because I think that is a really underutilized aspect of what clubs should be doing, just providing that level of support for players. I know a lot of companies these days have they utilize what's called an EAP, which stands for an employee assistance program. Basically what that is a mental health benefit. So you have dental, you have health insurance. This is a mental health benefit. Employees with certain companies get free mental health treatment, when they're struggling. So I know United recently, within the last few years, appointed a sports psychologist. I do hope that someone is checking in with the players now and then, making it a point for them to regularly maybe even sit down and just kind of, even if nothing else, just to vent, because it is helpful. Just sometimes being able to do that. And I know it can be difficult. There's a lot of pressure. I feel like being in such a public persona, you want to make sure you don't, put off give anybody any reason to write anything about you. Some of these players consider themselves role models, and yes, they are. So it can be hard. But what I will tell you, and again, I'm prefacing this with nothing I say is professional advice. It's just friendly, experienced knowledge, because that's how we get knowledge, right? And win wisdom from experience. The only thing worse than everybody knowing your business is nobody knowing your business. So don't be afraid to chat and just have fun. You can even if it's just a vent, it's important to get it out. So with this in mind, there's been a lot of talk about players being up for sale, including Rashford. When we heard Rashford is not interested in leaving United, so there's going to be a lot of rumors right now, especially regarding Rashford, especially regarding the new structure in place, especially regarding performances and Ten Hag and the fact that it's United. So just be patient. Don't bite every little piece of headline social media bait that someone wiggles in front of you, and just wait for the full context to come out. So in manager news, Christian Falk, obviously a respected German journalist, he's reporting that Erik ten Hag is being discussed for the manager position at Bayern Munich. Of course, we know Thomas Tuchel looks like he's leaving. If you want to know more about Thomas Tuchel as a manager, because he has been linked with United, go check out the video I did yesterday, my last video in my Managers Linked with United series, I did a big deep dive at Thomas Tuchel. A lot of information you wouldn't get on social media and online. A lot of it came from a lot of books, a lot of research that I've done. Again, big shout out to Ben Littleton's book Edge. There's a whole chapter in there on Thomas Tuchel. A lot of more about his time at Mainz, but he's got a lot to offer as a manager. I do think he'd be a good fit for United. So go check out that video if you haven't yet. Let me know your thoughts on that. But regarding the Bayern Munich job, Rangnick has been linked to that job. It does sound like he's more interested in staying with Austria. We did see some news that he's rejected the offer from Bayern Munich. And then we know, obviously, the links are there with Ten Hag and Bayern. He did work with their youth, I think they're under 21 to their reserves a long time ago, back when Pep was managing. So he is familiar with the club. Again, the media will like to take links and say correlation is causation, 2 and 2. This must be 5. Like, I'm sure he's on the list at Bayern. I'm sure he's one of their candidates. Again, I've said Ten Hag could walk into a lot of clubs if he were ever to get sacked from United. He's a very good manager. He has a lot to offer. Despite what people say, he does have a style of play. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But how serious all these links are with Bayern Munich remains to be seen. But I'm sure he's on the list. But we'll see what happens. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Ten Hag's interview recently with Gary Neville. Obviously, he sat down with Gary Neville. I think it was at Carrington for a Sky Sports interview. Sat down for like a half hour. Gary Neville does a lot of work with Sky Sports. He's got his show, The Overlap, as well. Please go watch. It's awesome. It's a great show. I love it. I think that Roy Keane, all these guys are on there just chatting football, talking. Jamie Carragher's on there as well. Go check it out if you've not watched. I have a lot of fun guests on there. So I want to just kind of go through, because I was watching this morning, taking some notes, reading through a lot of the, the quotes and things online. But I said I wanted to go watch the interview myself, because it's very easy to take a quote out of context and say this is what it means. I wanted to go watch the interview itself and take notes. So I did that, so you don't have to, but go ahead and watch it as well, because it's always good. It is always striking as I watch these things that you can definitely tell English is not Erik ten Hag's first language. He struggles at times. He's not like dumb or anything, but when it's not your first language, there are nuances, there are words that almost in some ways are considered maybe slang or whatever that he's just not quite clear on. So anyway, let's get down into this. So you can kind of tell straight out from some of the early questions that Gary Neville, who has been a very outspoken voice against Glazers for the last several years, you can tell he's trying to maybe coax out of Ten Hag, like, to blame the ownership for the failures. He asked a big important question. He asked, why do you think the club struggles with recruitment or has struggled with recruitment? So again, you can kind of tell he's leading Ten Hag a little bit, but Ten Hag is talking and he's describing the level of players that United should be targeting in recruitment because it's United. And this is what I mean when I say English is not his first language. He uses the word outstanding, but he stops and asks, like, is outstanding the right word? Like, again, we need to take that in consideration with pressers. Sometimes I think that sometimes we can take things out of context when Ten Hag speaks to the press and the media. But again, English is not his first language, so please take that in consideration. And so there's a lot of talk to say about him saying, confirming that Harry Kane was a target. We kind of can think and maybe some degree know that Harry Kane was a target, but Ten Hag doesn't really necessarily confirm that in this interview, despite what you're going to see today. He does mention that United were looking for top strikers. It's Gary Neville who actually mentions Harry Kane, and he kind of gives Harry Kane as an example of a top striker, not like, oh, that's who you're targeting. And Ten Hag kind of agrees, but I think agreeing in the sense of that's the level of striker that they were looking at. I don't think necessarily he was confirming that Harry Kane was a target. I think it was more confirming that type of that profile and that experience of striker is what we were targeting in the summer to work with Rasmus Højlund. Again, we know Højlund was not meant to be the main striker. And again, as you continue, you can tell Gary is fishing for Ten Hag to blame the club, because he goes on to say, because the club haven't brought in a top striker. And so Gary Neville is very critical of the ownership. He's very critical of the way the club has operated over the last decade or so, and rightfully so. We all are. But I think that Gary Neville tries very hard too frequently to fit everything into the Glazers' fault. A lot is the Glazers' fault, and we know that, but not everything is the Glazers' fault. So, like a striker missing an open goal is not the Glazers' fault, for instance. Ten Hag spoke about working with Jason Wilcox already. So we know Jason Wilcox kind of took over his role within the last couple weeks. Ten Hag spoke, they're already working quickly on recruitment plans for this summer. It's a very important summer. Ten Hag said we want to make the next steps and make plans to create an environment to avoid this year's problems with injuries. So basically, they're working proactively to improve squad depth, maybe looking at different profile of players who are a little bit more physical and offer a little bit more. So that when we do get injuries, it's not such a big blow. The whole system doesn't break down, and the depth in the next player isn't as far below the caliber of player that we had. So Ten Hag said last year we brought in people who can play from the back. We brought in a dynamic midfielder in Mason Mount. Again, he likes those dynamic midfielders, people who can play total football. Mason Mount did have a lot of defensive asset and good defensive stats at Chelsea, but he also is very creative and he's versatile. And we know that Dutch managers like players who can play off the ball, players who maybe are a little more versatile. We saw Louis van Gaal bring in Daley Blind, who played in a variety of positions for him. He played left back at the World Cup. He played center defensive midfielder for United, and then he kind of found his role as center back for United. Went back to Ajax with Ten Hag and started playing left back again. So Dutch managers like that. They like that ability in their players. So again, Ten Hag, he has a style of play, but again, the thing is his style of play is very reliant on player ability. It's very player specific. Players need to be able to do a lot of different things. Ten Hag said, when there are 30 combinations of a back four due to injuries, it's a huge setback. Again, playing out from the back requires certain type of profile for defenders and goalkeepers. And when you have all these injuries and all these different combinations, not only do you not have the players for your system, but again, how many times has he talked about patterns of play and things? When you're constantly changing, there's no consistency in your back line, no familiarity. It's hard to establish patterns and routines, and it's hard to see that fluidity and that assurance and that composure in the back because there's that lack of familiarity. So it'll take time. It hasn't even been 2 years. People will look at Pep and Klopp. Well, they've had 7, 8, 9 years with those players, and so they've been able to implement that system. Ten Hag also cites again the importance of a left-footed center back on the left side, how he wants to play with a high line, but it's hard to do with all the injuries we've had. But he does acknowledge, and I'm glad he acknowledges, like he's not using an excuse. He says it is the expectation for United to have to win matches no matter what. He knows that, and he has said several times it's not good enough. We're not doing good enough. I'm making silly mistakes, and it's not enough. I'm just gonna zoom out real quick here. There we go. So he says, even with all the changes to the back four, the rules and principles are still there, but the patterns are not. So again, like I said, like he's establishing basic rules, but just the routines, the muscle memory, the patterns, this is what you do here, this is what you do there. Like they're not quite there yet because of so many changes, a lack of familiarity with each other. Rio Ferdinand will talk many times on his show, 5. That familiarity, that's how important that is to a back line. Knowing each other's strengths, weaknesses, kind of time with each other can let you know when, if I'm going here, I know he's there. I don't have to worry so much because just familiarity. And you don't have that when you don't play with the same player very frequently. Neville did ask Ten Hag about his comments earlier in the season, or maybe it was last season, about not being able to play the Ajax style at United. And Ten Hag responded, you have to bring in players with those assets to play that style. Again, we all know this. It's so funny to me that we can all say this, that many times the players aren't good enough. We don't have it, but then we also will get mad when we aren't playing that style. We get mad at Ten Hag when he says that. Like, we can say it, we know it's true, but as soon as the manager says it, it's the end of the world. But Ten Hag kind of went on a little bit to say, he has the players he has. He knows these players their assets, their abilities, their profiles. He doesn't want to change their nature. He doesn't want to change the nature of a player who has a typical style of play. So what he's saying is he doesn't want to force players who can't play that style to play that style. He'd rather play to their style. And and sounds like to a degree he believes in his players. And I think that he's challenging them to take a next step, to level up a little bit and to play in a different system in some ways. But he's taking what they already have in terms of their assets and abilities, and he's doing that. Neville asked why the wide players aren't able to track back and are leaving their teammates isolated. Again, Ten Hag referred to just the defensive changes, lack of consistency, just a lack of just knowing what to do, where the other player is going to be and whatnot. Lack of adjustments. There's too many adjustments because of injuries. But Ten Hag says it doesn't have to do with the way we play. So take that what you will. Ten Hag said, of course, we've thought about changing to a more pragmatic style, but again, it doesn't fit the players that we have. And then we would have to return back to a proactive style when we return from injury. So he doesn't want to change styles. I get that. And I get that early on in the season because you're not planning for so many injuries early on in the season. But I think going to where we are now in the last month or so, I think that, in my opinion, and I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, I'm saying in my opinion, knowing where we are like now and what the injuries are now with a lot of players and the tail end of the season with so many important points to play for, I think it needs to be a needs must in some ways. But again, I'm not the manager, so in Ten Hag, he believes that you score more goals with his proactive style, with his high press, with his very attacking style. He says he scored, and we have scored a lot of goals. To be fair, recently we just also have conceded a lot of goals. So Ten Hag says, we put ourselves in a winning position, but we have to get it over the line. He says, we're doing the patterns are there. We're scoring goals. We're playing very attacking, very proactive football. We're not able to find that extra whatever to get it over the line, to see out these matches. It's silly mistakes. We're conceding too many goals and down the games. Neville did ask Ten Hag about his recent press conferences, and I've spoken about them too, how Erik Ten Hag's kind of come out swinging recently. Ten Hag said, I have to protect the team. I have to protect the players, basically. We know the standards. We are not happy with the season. We know still that we can win a cup, so we have to stay positive. Again, it doesn't help if Ten Hag comes out and he's just blaming everybody, all the players and everything. Like, again, fans are sitting here saying he's deluded. What is he talking about? Get him out of the club. But then they're going to call him a bully if he points out something. Like, you can't have it both ways. You know what I'm saying? I mean, managers are going to call out players sometimes, and I think that they do that when they think that they can challenge their players. Some players need to be challenged. Some players don't respond well, as we've seen, but that's on the player at that point. You can't treat them all like spoiled children. You have to be able to call them out now and then. And as a professional footballer, you have to be able to take feedback, take criticism, and instead of trying to kick off and try to force a move, you need to ask yourself, okay, well, if the coaches and Ten Hag are saying maybe I didn't do enough in training, what did I do? What could I do more of? Kind of a thing. But it helps to stay positive, especially with these crucial few weeks of the season. It doesn't help to kind of feed to the negativity. Come out swinging, defend the players, keep a positive mindset, and end on a positive note. Maintain the momentum. Come out strong. Ten Hag points out that there also have been improvements, and young players especially, need time to mature, and you only do that through experience. And sometimes it is experience of losing. I talked a lot online last year about how I didn't think Arsenal players had the experience of fighting for a title last year, had the experience of being disappointed. There are a lot of young players in that squad. They needed to build that experience of what a title challenge looks like in order to really put themselves. And you see now they're in a much better position this year than they were last year. Still don't think Arsenal are going to win the league, but they're in a much better place. You can tell they're playing a lot better. Ten Hag, Gary Neville asked about those reports of all these players being up for sale, and Ten Hag kind of laughed and said, "How many lies you have been told?" He said, "These are the lies. There's 1,000 lies, and this is one of them." It is what it is. Gary Neville asked if Ten Hag had a message for United fans. Ten Hag said, "We are disappointed as well, just like you. We're in the same boat. We're all disappointed. But we've shown this season that we can achieve high levels when everyone is on board, and we have a fit squad. We need to make the next steps in the transfer window to achieve the next levels. So Ten Hag gets it. He understands that it's not been good enough. He understands that fans are disappointed, and he admits that he and the players are disappointed too. The players have come out and said, it's not been good enough. They can do better. Um, and I know, and we all know that that's true. We just need to see more of it in these very few remaining matches. Very important points. We've dropped silly points. Burnley dropping points against Burnley was, and this isn't a disrespect against Burnley. It's more on us. Like that was an important match. We needed those 3 points. Obviously, Tottenham have not been doing very well. They just got destroyed by Chelsea yesterday, and that helps us. But at the same time, we can't rely on teams above us dropping points. We need to win points. We've got a couple big matches. We've got a really big match against a tough Crystal Palace side on Monday. A very important potential 6-point match against Newcastle. We've got Arsenal, and then we finish off with Brighton. And we need to try to get points out of all these games if possible. We just have to. There's no option. If we want to play in Europe next year, Chelsea are cruising up the table. They're not that far behind us right now. We have got to get points. And so that's going to do it for today's roundup. Come back this weekend. I will do a match preview of our Crystal Palace match. We'll talk injury, lineup predictions, score predictions. We'll look at Crystal Palace, how they've been doing, and what we can expect to see from them. And we will hopefully be back here following the match Monday for a positive match reaction. And then obviously we'll do my 3 points on Tuesday, the 3 takeaways from the match as always. So I appreciate you stopping by today. I always appreciate everybody taking time to watch the videos. I would appreciate just leaving a like on the videos, subscribing to the channel if you're new and you want to be notified when new videos are coming out. And please don't forget to leave a comment. I will respond to all the comments. I will engage with everybody who wants to share their thoughts. And I'll be happy to do that. So let me know your thoughts, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks.